Pain is not the enemy. Pain is the teacher. Net philosophy is written nowhere in official British military doctrine, but it is understood by every Royal Marine who has earned the Green Beret and every paratrooper who has completed P Company. The British approach to elite infantry training treats pain not as something to be minimized or avoided, but as something to be deliberately induced, systematically studied, and ultimately mastered. When American forces train alongside British Commandos, they encounter a training philosophy so fundamentally different from their own that it challenges assumptions they did not know. They held American doctrine is built around the idea that training should be hard but not gratuitously painful. British Commando doctrine is built around the idea that pain itself is the curriculum. The gap between these philosophies becomes visible in joint training environments where American soldiers, hardened by their own demanding programs, find themselves unprepared for what the British consider routine. This is not about which military is tougher. Both produce extraordinary soldiers. This is about fundamentally different theories of what training is supposed to accomplish and why the British deliberately build pain tolerance in ways that American doctrine was never designed to address. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how British Commandos train for pain, why American doctrine approaches the subject differently, and what happens when soldiers shaped by one philosophy encounter demands designed by the other. Let me start with the truth that few people outside professional military circles understand. All elite military training involves pain. This is unavoidable. Physical demands sufficient to build combat capability necessarily involve discomfort. Any selection process rigorous enough to identify exceptional individuals will cause suffering among those attempting it. The question is not whether pain will be present, but what role pain plays in the training design. American military doctrine approaches pain as a byproduct of difficult training. The training is designed to develop specific capabilities. Pain occurs as a side effect of the difficulty required to develop those capabilities. If the capability could be developed without pain, the pain would be eliminated. Pain is not the goal. Capability is the goal. Pain is accepted as the cost of achieving the goal. British Commando doctrine approaches pain differently. Pain is not merely accepted, pain is prescribed. The training is designed to produce pain beyond what capability development would require, because the experience of pain itself develops a capability that cannot be developed otherwise. That capability is pain tolerance. And pain tolerance is considered a fundamental combat skill as essential as marksmanship or navigation. This distinction shapes everything about how both forces train. It shapes what exercises are included in training programs. It shapes how intensity is calibrated. It shapes what instructors are permitted to impose on candidates. It shapes what soldiers expect when they begin training and what they become by the time they finish. The Royal Marines Commando training course extends 32 weeks. This is longer than most infantry training programs worldwide. The length exists partly because more skills must be taught, but it also exists because pain tolerance cannot be developed quickly. The body and mind must be exposed repeatedly to controlled suffering over extended periods before genuine tolerance emerges. Rushing this process produces soldiers who can endure pain temporarily but lack the deep tolerance that's sustained. Exposure creates. From the first week of Royal Marine training, candidates encounter what instructors call beast. This term has no direct American equivalent because the practice has no direct American equivalent. Beasting involves physical punishment administered not as consequence for failure but as deliberate training stimulus. Candidates are subjected to exhausting physical exercise designed to produce maximum discomfort within safety limits. The exercise serves no direct capability purpose. The purpose is the discomfort itself. American basic training includes strenuous physical exercise, but the exercise is designed to build fitness, not to produce pain as an end in itself. Drill instructors push recruits hard because hard pushing builds physical capability. The pain that results is incidental to the fitness development. If fitness could be built without pain, the pain would not be sought. British instructors seek the pain. They design sessions specifically to maximize discomfort without causing injury. The fitness that results is valuable, but secondary. The primary product is psychological adaptation to suffering. Candidates learn that pain is survivable. They learn that pain does not require response. They learn that the mind can observe pain without being controlled by it. These lessons cannot be taught through moderate discomfort. They require genuine suffering, administered in controlled doses. If you are finding this analysis valuable and want to understand what truly creates elite soldiers, subscribe right now. Next week, I am covering the most extreme selection processes in global special operations and revealing which nations demand the absolute most from their candidates. But right now, let me tell you about what happens during specific British Commando training evolutions. Because the details reveal how systematically pain is incorporated into every aspect of the program, The bottom field at the Commando Training Center, Royal Marines in Limpstone, is legendary among those who have experienced it. This area is used for evolutions specifically designed to induce maximum physical discomfort. The exercises conducted there have names that communicate their nature: regain drills, firemen's, carry races, log PT in mud. Each evolution is calibrated to produce suffering beyond what fitness development would require. Log PT deserves particular attention because it illustrates the philosophy perfectly. A team of candidates carries a heavy log through a series of obstacles while instructors add complications that serve no purpose except to increase difficulty. The log must be lifted overhead. It must be passed between team members in ways that strain muscles already exhausted. The pace is maintained beyond sustainable levels. Candidates who fail are recycled to the beginning. The log itself is heavier than tactically necessary. In actual operations, no team would carry a log of this weight in this manner. The exercise is not preparing candidates for log-carrying missions. The exercise is teaching pain tolerance through log carrying as the medium. The log is a vehicle for suffering, not a simulation of operational requirements. American military training includes log PT, most famously in Navy SEAL BUD-S training. But the American version, while extraordinarily difficult, is designed around building team cohesion and physical capability. The pain is real and intense. But the pain is not the objective. The cohesion and capability are the objectives. Pain results from pursuing those objectives. The distinction may seem semantic, but it produces different training outcomes. Soldiers, trained in a system where pain is incidental, develop pain tolerance as a byproduct. Soldiers trained in a system where pain is a curriculum, develop pain tolerance as a primary skill. The second group has more of it, because more was deliberately developed. The Commando tests that conclude Royal Marine training exemplify this philosophy. These tests include the Endurance course, the Tarzan Assault course, the 9-mile speed march, and the 30-miler across Dartmoor. Each test is designed at the edge of human capability specifically to ensure that candidates must push through significant pain to complete it. The 30-miler is particularly instructive. Candidates must cover 30 miles across Dartmoor carrying full equipment in 8 hours. The terrain is deliberately chosen to maximize difficulty. Boggy ground, steep gradients. Weather that adds cold and wet to exhaustion. The 8-hour time limit ensures that candidates cannot pace themselves comfortably. They must push beyond comfort for the entire duration. There is no tactical scenario that requires exactly this capability. Real operations do not involve precisely 30-mile marches across precisely this terrain. In precisely this time, the test is not simulating an operational requirement. The test is producing pain at a calibrated intensity, designed to verify and reinforce pain tolerance developed over the preceding months of training. American infantry training includes demanding march, but the march distances and times are calibrated to operational requirements and physical development. A 12-mile ruck in 3 hours prepares soldiers for realistic movement requirements. The standard is achievable with moderate discomfort by properly prepared soldiers. The standard is not designed to produce extreme suffering as a primary objective. The P Company selection for British paratroopers follows similar philosophy. The events include the 10-mile loaded march in 1 hour, 50 minutes, the milling exercise, and the log race. Each event is designed at an intensity that guarantees significant pain for all participants. Milling deserves specific attention because it has no American equivalent whatsoever. In milling, candidates face an opponent for 60 seconds of continuous, aggressive fighting. There is no defense. There is no evasion. Each candidate must attack continuously for the entire minute while absorbing punishment from an equally aggressive opponent. The experience is designed to be painful. That is explicitly the point. The instructors evaluating milling do not score based on fighting technique. They score based on controlled aggression and willingness to absorb punishment while continuing to attack a candidate who dominates technically but shows hesitation when hit fails. A candidate who absorbs severe punishment while continuing to press forward passes. The test measures exactly what it is designed to measure. Pain tolerance. Under duress, American infantry and airborne training includes combatives instruction. Soldiers learn fighting techniques and engage in sparring, but the sparring is designed to develop fighting skill, not to produce pain as the primary objective. Soldiers are taught to defend themselves, to avoid unnecessary damage, to fight smart. The British milling test explicitly rejects these principles. It rewards accepting pain rather than avoiding it. This philosophical difference extends throughout both training systems. American doctrine generally assumes that a soldier who can perform required tasks has sufficient pain tolerance. If you can complete the march, you can tolerate the pain of the march. If you can pass the combatives test, you can handle the pain of fighting. Pain tolerance is verified through capability demonstration. British Commando doctrine assumes that pain tolerance must be developed beyond what task completion would naturally produce. The tasks are designed to require more pain tolerance than necessary. Soldiers are pushed past the point of capability verification into deliberate suffering, designed to expand tolerance further. The training does not stop when capability is demonstrated. The training continues until pain tolerance is maximized within safety constraints. Let me explain. The psychological mechanism that makes this approach effective, because understanding the mechanism reveals why it produces different soldiers. Pain is a signal the nervous system generates pain to warn of potential damage. This warning function is essential for survival. Without pain, humans would injure themselves constantly without awareness. Pain exists because it protects the organism from harm. But pain is also a signal that can be misinterpreted. The subjective experience of pain does not accurately reflect actual damage. Pain can be severe without injury being present. Pain can be mild when serious injury exists. The relationship between pain and harm is real, but imperfect. Soldiers who have not experienced extensive pain under controlled conditions tend to interpret pain as an accurate indicator of their limits. When pain becomes severe, they assume they are approaching injury. They slow down, protect themselves, reduce output. This response is rational if pain accurately indicates danger. It is counterproductive if pain exaggerates danger. Soldiers who have repeatedly experienced severe pain without corresponding injury develop a different relationship with pain signals. They learn through experience that pain intensity does not reliably indicate proximity to actual damage. They become capable of observing pain without being controlled by it. They can maintain output despite pain signals because they have verified that pain at these intensities does not require protective response. British Commando training systematically produces this recalibration. By inducing severe pain repeatedly, in controlled conditions where candidates can verify that they are not actually being damaged, the training teaches soldiers to distrust pain as a performance limiter. They learn that pain is information but not command. They can choose how to respond to pain rather than being reflexively controlled by it. American training produces pain tolerance through the difficulty of required tasks. Soldiers learn some degree of pain management by completing hard things. But the pain exposure is generally less intense and less prolonged because pain is not explicitly designed into the training as a primary objective. The recalibration occurs, but to a lesser degree. When American and British forces train together, this difference becomes visible in how soldiers respond to painful stimuli. British soldiers often continue at normal output through pain that causes American soldiers to reduce effort. This is not because British soldiers are inherently tougher. It is because their training has more thoroughly recalibrated their response to pain signals. Let me tell you about specific joint training experiences that illustrate this difference, because individual accounts reveal what aggregate description cannot capture. A U.S. Marine sergeant who participated in a training exchange with 42 Commando described his experience adjusting to British training culture. He said the British approach to pain was unlike anything in his Marine Corps experience. American training is hard, he acknowledged. But American training generally has a purpose beyond the hardship itself. The British seemed to create hardship, specifically to create hardship. It took him weeks to understand that the hardship was the purpose. He described a specific evolution where his unit conducted a beach landing exercise, followed immediately by a 5-kilometer run in boots and wet uniforms. The run served no tactical purpose. There was no enemy to pursue and no objective to reach. The only purpose was suffering. He initially assumed there was some training rationale he did not understand. Eventually, he realized the training rationale was the suffering itself. His assessment after the exchange was that the British produce soldiers with higher pain tolerance than American training produces. He did not say they were better soldiers. Overall, he said their pain tolerance was specifically higher because it was specifically developed. A British Royal Marine corporal who trained alongside American Marines offered perspective from the other side. He said American Marines were extremely fit and extremely tough. Their capability was not in question, but they seemed to regard pain as something to be endured when necessary, rather than something to be sought as training stimulus. When optional suffering was available, they tended to avoid it. This was rational from their perspective, but limiting from his. He described a rest period during joint training where both groups had the option to conduct additional physical training or recover. The British routinely chose additional training. Despite exhaustion, the Americans routinely chose recovery. Neither choice was wrong, but the choices reflected different training philosophies producing different relationships with discomfort. A U.S. Army captain who observed the exchange program offered command perspective. She noted that American doctrine emphasizes efficiency. Training should produce maximum capability with minimum waste. Suffering that does not directly contribute to capability is waste to be eliminated. This philosophy produces good training outcomes efficiently. The British philosophy, she observed, rejects the premise that suffering unconnected to specific capability is waste. The suffering itself produces capability, specifically pain tolerance capability, that efficient training does not produce. The British accept less efficient training in exchange for more pain tolerance development. Her conclusion was that neither approach was universally superior. American efficiency produces soldiers faster. British comprehensive pain exposure produces soldiers who may be more resilient under the specific conditions where pain tolerance determines performance. The optimal approach depends on what you are optimizing for. The historical origins of these different philosophies illuminate why they developed. American military training was shaped significantly by the need to produce large forces quickly. World War II required millions of soldiers, trained in minimum time. The draft system through Vietnam continued this requirement. Efficiency was not merely desirable, but essential. Training that took longer than necessary to produce capable soldiers was training that failed the national requirement. British Commando training was designed for different requirements. Commandos were always small in number. Quality, rather than quantity, was the organizing principle. Training could extend because fewer soldiers needed to be trained. Pain tolerance could be developed thoroughly because there was time for thorough development. The smaller force could invest in individual soldiers at levels that mass armies could not afford. These origins persist in current training structures. American forces remain larger and must continue producing soldiers at rates that constrain training duration. British Commando forces remain smaller and can continue investing more extensively in each individual. The philosophical differences reflect structural differences that have not changed. The operational implications of these training differences are difficult to measure but occasionally visible. British forces have participated in extended operations, where pain tolerance arguably contributed to performance. The Falklands Campaign involved conditions of sustained hardship where soldiers had to function effectively while cold, wet, hungry, and exhausted for extended periods. The ability to maintain output despite discomfort was directly relevant to operational success. American forces have conducted equally demanding operations. The question is not whether American soldiers can endure pain. They clearly can. The question is whether their training develops pain tolerance to the same degree as British Commando training. The evidence suggests it does not, simply because that is not what the training is designed to do. The modern American military has begun examining whether increased emphasis on pain tolerance training would improve soldier effectiveness. The Army's new fitness test includes events designed to better simulate combat demands. Some units have increased training intensity beyond previous norms. The direction of change suggests awareness that current training may not fully develop available pain tolerance capacity, but institutional change is slow. Training structures that were optimized for efficiency over decades cannot be revised quickly. The American military continues to produce soldiers whose pain tolerance is developed incidentally rather than deliberately. The gap with British Commandos persists. Let me address what this difference means practically for soldiers who experience both systems. The American soldiers who train with British Commandos return with changed perspectives on what is possible. A U.S. Army Sergeant First Class who completed a 6-month exchange with the parachute regiment described the experience as redefining his limits. He said he had believed he knew his physical limitations after years of demanding training in combat. The British showed him those limits were partly psychological constrictions that could be pushed further. He described specific moments when he wanted to slow down or reduce effort and saw British soldiers maintaining output despite obvious suffering. Their example demonstrated that the suffering did not require reduced effort. It only required continued effort despite the suffering. He learned to do the same, that his operational performance after returning, he believed, had improved specifically. Because his pain tolerance had increased, he could maintain higher output longer in difficult conditions, because the British training had recalibrated his relationship with discomfort. The capability was invisible in normal operations. It became visible when operations became painful. The British paratrooper, who observed American soldiers during exchange training, offered an observation that illuminates the cultural difference. He said American soldiers seemed to believe that extreme suffering was reserved for extreme situations. They could access deep reserves when necessary, but preferred to operate in more moderate discomfort when possible. This was sensible but potentially limiting. British training, he explained, normalized extreme suffering. Soldiers became accustomed to functioning at high output and high pain. This was not extreme mode for them. This was normal mode. When actual operations became extremely painful, they had headroom that soldiers who reserved extreme capacity for extreme situations did not have. This observation suggests that the British approach produces something beyond simply higher pain tolerance. It produces normalized operation at discomfort levels that other soldiers consider exceptional. The baseline is set higher because training established that higher baseline as normal. If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe now and hit the notification bell. Next week I am covering the physical selection standards across NATO, special operations forces, and revealing which nations maintain standards that others consider impossible to meet. The week after that, I am examining a case where American training philosophy proved more effective than British approaches. Because learning flows in both directions. Drop your comments below. Tell me about your own experiences with pain tolerance training. If you have served, tell me whether you believe deliberate suffering develops capabilities that incidental suffering does not. These perspectives shape future content, and they matter, because this question affects how militaries worldwide prepare soldiers for combat. If you learned something from this video, share it with someone who appreciates understanding how elite soldiers are actually created. Not the movie version where heroic individuals simply decide to be tough, but the systematic version, where training design shapes capability development through deliberate exposure to calibrated stimuli. The difference between training for pain and training through pain is not semantic, it is fundamental. The British Commando approach deliberately incorporates suffering as a primary training objective. The American approach accepts suffering as a byproduct of capability-focused training. Both produce excellent soldiers. They produce soldiers with different relationships to pain. American doctrine was not built for the British approach because American doctrine was optimized for different requirements. Producing large numbers of soldiers efficiently required training designs that minimized waste. Deliberate suffering that did not directly build measurable capability was classified as waste. The doctrine is rational given its objectives. It produces the soldiers it was designed to produce. British Commando doctrine was built for quality over quantity. Smaller forces could receive more investment per soldier. Pain tolerance could be developed deliberately because the training timeline permitted deliberate development. The doctrine is equally rational, given its different objectives. Neither approach is wrong. Both are optimized for specific requirements. The soldiers produced by each approach are shaped by that optimization. When they work together, the differences become visible. Those differences are not deficiencies in either force. They are the natural consequences of different training philosophies pursuing different objectives through different methods. What remains true is that pain tolerance matters in combat. Soldiers who can function effectively despite severe discomfort have capabilities that soldiers who require comfort lack. The question for any military is how deliberately to develop that tolerance and how much training investment to allocate to it. The British answered that question one way. The Americans answer it another way. Both answers produce capable forces. The British answer produces forces with more deliberately developed pain tolerance. Whether that additional tolerance justifies the additional training investment is a question without universal answer. It depends on what operations you expect and what soldiers you need. Until next time, remember that pain is not just something that happens during training. Pain can be training. The British Commandos understand this. Their training makes soldiers who understand it too. Those soldiers carry capabilities that less painful training would not develop. Whether that capability matters depends on whether future operations demand it. The British trained for pain because pain itself creates capability. American doctrine was not built for this because American doctrine was built for efficient capability development. Both approaches work. They work differently. Understanding the difference is essential for anyone seeking to understand what makes soldiers effective under the conditions where effectiveness requires. Continuing despite every signal demanding that you stop.